Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Raising Cane's studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane's studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Take it back. Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, and we've got a ton to react to over those 2 hours. We'll have Ross Jackson, LouisianaSports.net, and Locked On Saints coming up in 10 minutes. Saints are off the schneid. They get a victory over the Giants yesterday, so we'll talk to Ross about that before he meets with Kellen Moore. I've got my thoughts on that game as well. Talk to Dr. Jeremy Burnham at the end of the hour about some sports medicine issues. LSU issued a pretty lengthy injury update today at Brian Kelly's press conference. We'll get into that at the end of the hour. My SEC picks against the spread from last Thursday. I picked the opposite of everything I thought would happen. We'll see how that worked out. We've got some Pro Football Focus grades for LSU season long in terms of how the Tigers have been in coverage. And Denton Day, SiriusXM's college football overtime at 2:30. Got a lot of things to talk to Denton about because it was a wild weekend in college football over the weekend. No LSU football, but a lot to react to over the course of this 2 hours. So let's start things the way we do every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
We actually start today away from football. I think most of you are aware that on Friday, a video was released by Kyren Lacy's attorney, Michael Ory. It's about 45 minutes long and detailed his findings from the investigation performed by the Lafourche Parish District Attorney in regards to the incident that resulted in a fatal car accident that Kyren Lacy was charged in relation to. And so I thought it was worth talking about here on this Monday. I am not here to issue some sort of legal decision. I'm not here to tell you, the listener, how to feel about the legal proceedings in this case. You are very, very free to go watch the video and draw any conclusion that you may have from that. Again, that's not why I'm here. I'm not going to go through everything that Michael Ory went through. I think he did a very good job of revealing information and did it in a mild manner, and I thought fairly straightforward way that shed new light on this incident. I, like most of you, found out about this incident online, and you read the charges and you see the mugshot and the bail, and everyone gets their day in court. But when things like that happen, it's very easy for the general public to jump into one camp. Michael Ory shows video of the collision. I don't think it's graphic in any way. If you're inclined to stay away from things like that on the internet, you certainly see the cars collide, but it is more informative to me than graphic. And you see Kyren's vehicle, and then he went through a lot of information from the black box in these vehicles that show speed, that show distance, that show angle of turns. There's factual data in terms of the seconds involved and when this happened and when that happened, the sequence of events that led to the incident and the collision. And I'm not going to go through all of that because it's a 44-minute video and I've got 8 minutes to get through this. Essentially, what I took, and this is my personal opinion, I am not dealing in complete fact here when I start to give the opinion that I have after watching the video. So you're, again, free to do what you will with the information that Michael Ory provided. But my opinion is that Michael Ory shows out that Kyren Lacy passed 4 vehicles in a no-pass zone. That is a traffic infraction for sure. The Lafourche police officers that showed up, the Louisiana State Police, determined that that reckless act triggered a sequence of events that ultimately led to the collision. Michael Ory suggests that, yes, while Kyren did pass 4 vehicles in a no-passing zone, he returned to his lane within the parameters of the law for a pass, and that the sequence of events that led to the collision were actually in the northbound lane of traffic as opposed to Kyren's in the southbound lane, and that the Louisiana State Police officer coerced one of the vehicles involved to release a statement that that person did not sign for that suggested that one of the vehicles involved emergency braked because of Kyren's actions. Now, my opinion on this is that Kyren broke the law by passing those vehicles. My opinion, I cannot be more clear about this. My opinion is that the actual fatal collision was likely more so caused by the vehicle that was heading northbound that ultimately ran into the car that the deceased victim was driving. That's my opinion based on what is laid out. Now, I am fully going to suggest that I don't have every bit of information here. And I understand that this is a district attorney investigation, and I am listening to Michael Ory's version of what he gleaned from the information, and he represented Kyren Lacy. I understand all of that. My opinion is that the information would point to the fact that while Kyren did something wrong and reckless previous to the collision, that it is unlikely, in my estimation, that is what caused the fatal crash. Now, that is the car collision aspect of this. There is more to this that I want to get into, that I feel passionate about. This is a tragedy twofold. It's a tragedy because the collision resulted in the death. That's a tragedy. And then furthermore, the loss of Kyren is tragic as well. And I never met Kyren, but I do know that Kyren wasn't alone. I know that Kyren had a family around him. He was with his younger brother the day he died. His father has been very outspoken on social media in support of him. I listened to his girlfriend of many years stand in my kitchen and tell me about how excited she was for the next chapter of their life just a couple of months before Kyren died. And I know that those people surrounded him. I know that there's a football program here that he was a part of for 3 years. And for the sequence of events to happen from the collision to the arrest to his death by self-inflicted gunshot wound, it's so tragic for me to sit back and think about, because it's impossible for me to put myself in his shoes. He became a public figure in college, which so few of us have happened. I can't put myself in that position. But because of that position that he was put in, you start to think about how amazing the next chapter of your life could be, both in terms of your professional career, what goes into being a player in the National Football League. I mean, the guy shared a huddle with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and Jaden Daniels and guys who have grown to astronomical fame and have become multimillionaires. I mean, that's an exciting thing to think about at 21, 22, 23 years old. And so few of us have the opportunity to think that way. Like, when you feel like all that's being taken away, I can't put myself in those shoes. That's really, really hard. But I feel like, and this is the thing that I'm going to leave this with, and this is ultimately not the most important thing, but it's something that I drew from this and I want to talk about. We live in a society that is so toxic on the internet. And based on Kyren's attorney's firsthand account of this, with his firsthand encounters with Kyren, what Kyren dealt with on the internet after this happened, is just awful. And we live in a world where people get really confident in themselves on the internet, and it's not real life. People are different when they're typing anonymously on a keyboard as opposed to when they speak to people in person. And that's the worst part of social media. I wish Kyren had thought more about the people that loved him. I wish he had thought more about the fact that his attorney felt he had a great case here, should that day be heard. And before it could ever be heard, Kyren took his own life. And I wish he would have thought about those things. And this is my opinion again, but it's based in what we heard from Kyren's attorney, that he was dealing with so much in that fake world that can become all too real to some people that he couldn't take it. And if there's anyone listening that has a tendency to maybe get into that world and think that way when someone drops a pass or strikes out, or in this case, there's a legal proceeding where that day in court has not been had, and you feel the need to get there and type something out on the internet, think about the people that are involved. It breaks my heart. It really does. And there are a lot of things that led up to this, and there are a lot of layers to this story. But to me, one of the things that struck the chord is thinking about the fact that social media is not going anywhere. And it's a part of young people's lives. And young people aren't necessarily as mature as they will be. And that's a really difficult thing to deal with. So the next time you want to go to a keyboard and type something out and feel like you're in the right because you want to make someone feel bad, you have hate in your heart, you're being mean, think twice about that. Real people affected. There's so many layers to this, and I don't mean to label this as a social media event. There are two people that have lost their lives. But it struck a chord to me, and I wanted to bring that forward here in our lead today. So there's no real easy way to move on from that. But I wanted to talk about it first today. We're going to talk about sports the rest of the way. If you want to watch that video, it's very accessible online. We've got some stories on louisianasports.net about it as well. There have been multiple statements made in the last 72 hours, and all that is worth reading, in my opinion. But the last part there is something that it rubs me the wrong way. And I live a lot of my life on social media and see a lot of that kind of stuff. And it's something that I wanted to talk about today. So we'll move forward. We'll talk to Ross Jackson about the Saints when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Winless no more. New Orleans Saints get a victory over the New York Giants, 26-14, the final in the Dome yesterday. Saints force 5 turnovers from Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo, and the Giants, and moved to 1-4 on the season. Ross Jackson covers the Who Dats, Locked On Saints, of course, louisianasports.net as well. Give us a little bit of time here on this Monday. Ross, how are you?
Hey, man, doing great. Thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure. What was your biggest takeaway? I'll get big picture to start. Biggest takeaway from Sunday in the Dome?
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway were the takeaways.
Okay.
5 consecutive takeaways for that New Orleans Saints defense. It's the first time the Saints have done something like that since 1991. Remember, that was a vaunted defense at that time, and they actually did it twice in that season. But to me, that was the big thing. I think you saw good things on the offensive side here and there, a little bit maybe more sporadic. But the way that New Orleans Saints defense responded after surrendering 2 back-to-back touchdowns on Giants opening possessions and then shutting out that team the rest of the way through, including those 5 takeaways, and all of those, or a lot of those plays, having some contribution from the young defensive pieces, I think that was kind of my biggest thing that I walked away with from this game.
Let's talk about a couple of those. Jonas Sanker, tackle for loss, 7 stops on the day, and of course was involved in takeaway. What can you tell us about what he has been for the last month for the Saints team?
He's just such an impactful player, and like this is the guy that the Saints were super, super excited was still on the board when they selected him in this year's draft. They were, really excited to get him involved in the defense as well once the opportunity opened up there. Obviously, it happened in a less than, advantageous way with having lost Julian Blackmon in the process. But the way that he has just stepped in now, contributing to 2 takeaways in 2 games at this point, or in the last 2 games at this point, he's just been somebody that always finds his way around the ball, communicates incredibly well, which is absolutely necessary in this Brandon Staley defense. You can see how, the safety rotations and the way that these young rookies, move and fill the areas where each other vacate and all those things. Like it is just a really, really impressive thing to watch how quickly he's caught on to this defense and this scheme as a rookie.
Kool-Aid McKinstry gets a couple of picks, his first 2 as a pro, was also victimized on the second touchdown the Giants scored. And at that point, you're kind of thinking, this is what we've seen for a few weeks. What kind of improvements did you see as the game went on from him, and how big a day was Sunday for Kool-Aid?
Yeah, he didn't have the strongest day to start, but I mean, I had spoken to some people earlier on in the week that were really impressed with sort of his week of preparation and being able to get out there and kind of show that as the game went on. I thought really stood out. He had the 2 interceptions, but then he also had the pass breakup against Theo Johnson in the end zone on the left sideline when they tried to run that fade route with the big body tight end there toward the end of the game. He also had a lead block or really a block that kept Darius Slayton at bay as Jordan Howden was returning that that fumble recovery for a touchdown. He just had a really, really strong game. And if you're the New Orleans Saints, what you're hoping is that this is kind of the opening of the floodgates, if you will. I remember years ago watching a young Derek Stingley Jr. with LSU, and it had gotten into maybe 4 or 5 games of the season. I think that they were going up against Vanderbilt. He got his first interception, if I remember correctly. And then after that, the floodgates just kind of opened for him. And then he had this incredible season after that. Saints are certainly hoping to see a similar situation happen with another player here in the state of Louisiana.
Let's move to the offensive side. Finally, the big play shows up for New Orleans, and it was at a great time for Spencer Rattler and Rashid Shaheed. What kind of development was that, and is it something that they maybe can build on?
Yeah, it's big. I think the thing that you saw after that play was how the Giants had to respond, knowing that that play was in their, in the Saints' coffers at that point. That they had to be honest around the deep ball, and it caused 2 pass interference penalties later on that they got of 19 and 16 yards on back-to-back plays. That's the reason why you want these big explosive plays. It's not just because, it'll get you into the end zone every now and then. And certainly we know that explosive plays lead to points. You go back to 2020 through 2023, 51% of drives that had an explosive play ended in a score. 2 explosive plays was over 80%, and it takes you from 2.3% to 28% when it comes to scoring a touchdown. I mean, having explosive plays in your offense certainly helps you out. And so I think that, those are some of the ripple effects that come from that. It was the only pass that the Saints threw that ended up, counting as an offensive play that went for over 20 yards in terms of air yards there. So the Saints still being maybe a little bit too selective about when they take their shots. They could still stand to get a little bit more aggressive there. But I think getting that first one in the book certainly helps to kind of settle everybody in and build some confidence around the deep ball. And maybe we'll see more of that as the season rolls along.
What did you see from the Saints offense in the red zone?
Not a lot. That's a big place where they've got to find a way to continue to, finite or really kind of, figure out the sort of finite details of how and what they want to do as an identity in the red zone. 0-3 in this game when it came to touchdowns in the red zone. And when you've got a kicker that's missing short field goals and things like that, that's not an ideal situation to put yourself in, because you really run the risk of not only walking away without a touchdown in the red zone, you have to be honest about the risk of walking away without a score in the red zone when you're in striking distance at this point. And so the Saints really need to get their kind of red zone identity figured out as Taysom Hill gets more and more embedded in this Saints offense and in Kellen Moore's offense. I imagine he'll get back to being a big part of what the Saints love to do in the red zone. He was a 10% differential on the field versus off the field for New Orleans last year in the red zone. And so I think that'll be an opportunity for them as they get him a little bit more comfortable in the system.
You mentioned the field goals. What do we make of Blake Grupe through the 5 games?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's concerning, right? I mean, he's one of the guys that's got, I think it's one of the lowest field goal percentages so far this season. And I think if you go back over the last few years, it's one of the lowest field goal percentages cumulative over the time that he's been in the NFL. And so, you're in the Sean Payton days, that wouldn't have gotten you anywhere here in New Orleans for very long. He was quick to move on from kickers, as we saw. But, the Saints are going to continue to be patient here with him, but they have a young guy that could be really interesting in Charlie Smith as they start to figure out exactly where they want to go with him and what it is that he's going to be able to do. And so we'll see. The Saints have been doing a good job getting a look at a lot of young players. You start to wonder whether or not they'll eventually start to get a look at a different field goal kicker here, or if Blake Grupe just simply gets to a point where he hits that rhythm that he had in training camp, because he was outstanding in training camp. But for whatever reason, that hasn't translated here to the regular season.
Last one, Ross. I know you got to get to a press conference here. You're with this team just about every day. What does a win do for that locker room, for Kellen Moore, for Spencer Rattler, and just for morale moving forward?
Yeah, I think that there's just a lot of positivity around this team, win or loss. I think that's just kind of what Kellen Moore brings. But you can certainly feel the weight off the shoulder, the levity that comes with getting that first win of the season, and it coming against an opponent that they should have beat. If we're being honest, they were the better team on the football field on paper. And so being able to go out there and have a confident stand, knowing that you should go in and win that game and getting that done, I think that just kind of boosts the confidence. The big thing for them now is to see if they can turn it into a streak, see if they can get a second in a row. This still isn't a playoff team or a Super Bowl team or anything like that by any stretch of the imagination. But what you're looking for from this team is continued progress. And I think the Saints are really feeling that. And you can certainly feel the kind of joy associated with that when you're in the locker room about it.
Locked On Saints every day, LouisianaSports.net every day. Looking for your black and cold coverage. Ross Jackson has got you covered. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, bud. You take care. Stay safe. Appreciate you having me on.
Sure will. That is Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints and LouisianaSports.net. He was in the Dome yesterday. Looked like a festive environment there in the Dome, and that's a good thing. As Ross just mentioned at the end there, doesn't mean that the Saints are knocking on the playoffs doors, but it just is nice to get one in the win column against a team that came in not very good. Now, they had a nice win last week, but they're not a very good football team. Now 1-4, have not won away from their home football stadium. The Saints finally get on the board with a victory there. Now 1-4. 1-2 at home. I got my thoughts on this game between the Saints and the Giants, so we'll get to some of those when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Every car that's on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. And every single Genesis comes with America's best warranty. We're talking industry-leading stuff from a warranty perspective. Their powertrain warranty, 10 years, 100,000 miles. Their new vehicle warranty, bumper to bumper, 5 years, 60,000 miles. Enhanced roadside assistance, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 5 years, no matter how many miles you put on that vehicle. 5 years of the peace of mind of knowing that you're covered wherever you are on the road. Genesis has you covered. And then you've got your complimentary scheduled maintenance that is valet for 3 years and 36,000 miles. That just makes life so much easier when you know you don't have to be responsible for handling that oil change. You don't have to be responsible for that air filter, that wiper fluid, the wiper blades. They got you covered over at Genesis. They'll come to you, pick your car up, get it serviced, bring it back, and all the while you've got a loaner while your car is away. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. They're on airline at Pico, and of course you can find them online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Hope that work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge, Hour 2. Lots and lots to do. Got my SEC picks against the spread. Just some takes from the SEC. I'll just be honest because we're 30 minutes from that, and some of you will have left your vehicles by the time we get to that. I'm a little uncomfortable with the way things are shaking out in the SEC currently. Just a little uncomfortable with it. Got Bama playing really well. I got A&M with just a cakewalk. I got LSU with some real question marks. I'm not super pumped about what's going on in the SEC, but I'll talk about that at the top of the second hour. I am pumped about LSU's coverage grades by Pro Football Focus. Get into some of that in the second hour. Denton Day is going to be with us as well. So a lot of college football in hour number 2. Let's stick with the NFL and stick with the New Orleans Saints, who, as we mentioned in the last segment, got that 26-14 win. Beyond everything else, because there are like 5 different things I want to get into in this game. Beyond everything else, great job getting a win. Very, very good for Kellen Moore to get his first win. Very, very good for Spencer Rattler to get his first win. Those two guys are kind of carrying that on their back, not having won, and that's tough. And you want to be rewarded from a lot of hard work, and this is a game that you absolutely, positively could win. And the Saints went out and won it. It was a game where they outplayed New York in every phase of the game, really, except for maybe starting things out. You got down early in the game. Giants went right down the field for a couple touchdowns early. But beyond that, I thought they were much the better. You shut out New York in the second half and really seized control of the game and got those 5 straight turnovers and stops. So I'm going to mention some things I did not like in this game, but I'm going to do that at the end. The most important thing is you got that win, and that's a big, big deal. Easier to get up and come in for treatment and film on Monday. Easier to lace them up and ready to get after it for practice on Wednesday. Just you needed this win. I did not want to see this mushroom to 0-5, 0-6, 0-8, 0-11. Like you don't want that. When you're trying to implement a culture, you're trying to turn an organization around and rebuild things, the vibes of things going way south way early are no good. And this doesn't mean that the Saints aren't going to have a really lopsided record this year, but it's just good to get one. And the Saints got one. Why'd they get one? Well, it starts with the 5 turnovers. And while I would suggest that fumbles are a little bit fluky, I did think that the Saints made some good plays. Brzee, DeMario, getting your hand in there and getting the ball free. Thought they did a good job of being Johnny on the spot and getting on them, but it's just an active defense that made things difficult on the Giants much of the day. You didn't see a lot of long runs. The long run for Scadaboo was 9 yards. You were talking about Jackson Dart. He threw for 202 yards and only completed 26 of his 40 throws. 2 of those were picked off by Kool-Aid McKinstry. Like anywhere you look at the Giants offense, it was not very effective beyond their first 2 drives. Yep, they went right down the field a couple times. You saw Kool-Aid get victimized a couple times early in the game, one on the second touchdown that the Giants scored. Like, it was a bad start. It was a great finish from New Orleans. It was awesome to see Jonas Sanker get involved in a couple of big plays. That feels like, to me, the first guy that you can speak confidently about in this draft class that you really hit on. I feel great about Kelvin Banks, but Sanker's really making some plays and making an impact, and you didn't really know if he was going to get on the field this year, and then Kyren hangs it up, and you've got, unfortunately, an injury at safety, and so you're 2 safeties down, and boom, you get Sanker in the game to play, and he's really making the most of it. He's been in game-changing plays, turnover-worthy plays 2 games in a row now, and I really like the way that he's playing in the secondary. Kool-Aid gets his hands on a couple of balls. We talked to Ross about that in the first segment here that we did on the Saints, and that's a guy that has been picked on a lot in the first month of the season, no question. Been picked on a lot, and he gives up that first touchdown, that seam route, and you're like, geez, this guy can't make a play. They're just going right at him, and so for him to make a couple plays is great. I thought the second interception was a great play to read that on that in-breaking route, to jump it and make the catch with his hands. That's a really athletic play. The first interception, if we're being quite honest, he shouldn't have caught it. You're talking about losing 30 yards of field position on a 4th down play to catch that ball and run out of bounds at the 5-yard line. But we're taking baby steps here. If this is a playoff game, I really need you to make the decision to not catch that. In a situation where you're 0-4, you've never had an interception, and we got a 2-score lead, I'm going to live with it for sure. But it was good to see those 2 guys go out there and make some plays. That was great. The defense as a whole played awesome. Jackson Dart wasn't great in the win 2 weeks ago. The Giants picked Herbert off a couple times, and that's why they won that game up in New York. But the Saints were the ones that capitalized on those turnovers, and I thought that was great. And so by the flip side of that, there were 2 things that I loved about Spencer Rattler's day on Sunday. The first one, obviously, is the big play touchdown. You've got, statistically, the second best big play wide receiver in the National Football League over the last 5 years. It's Tyreek Hill, number 1. It's Rashid Shaheed, number 2. Rashid Shaheed, on that play, went 23 miles per hour, which was the fastest clocked time anyone in the NFL has run this year. So you've got a guy that is a difference maker. And to sit here and dink and dunk for 4 quarters every Sunday is a waste of his talent. And so finally, Rattler makes a big-time throw on a great route by Shaheed. They got a matchup they liked. He dropped it right in the bucket and allowed Shaheed to run. Rattler, to me, his biggest problem has not necessarily been decision-making this year. His biggest problem has been accuracy. He's been inaccurate on some throws. And to get a big catch and run, you've got to be accurate on that throw to hit the guy in stride and let him turn it up the field. And that ball was thrown right on the money to Rashid Shaheed, who turned it up the field and turned it into a big play touchdown that the Saints absolutely positively had to have. So I loved that. That's the first thing I loved from Spencer Rattler in this game on Sunday. The second was no turnovers. No turnovers. And you've got a Giants team that's turning the ball over every possession, and Rattler goes out there and doesn't turn it over.
There was another interception called back for a flag.
There was, but I'm looking at the final stat sheet.
I know.
And we like no turnovers. So it's you got 2 young quarterbacks that are playing out there, and one of them is turning the ball over, and the other one is not. And that, to me, was the key to this game. The Saints weren't great on offense. It was what they didn't do that helped them the most. And that brings me to a couple of negatives in this game, because there was a lot of positive and they won the game, and I want to get to that first, but I can't just leave out the other stuff. Red zone offense stunk. Red zone offense was bad. 3 times in the red zone, no touchdowns. If you're going to tell me that you're not going to be explosive down the field, which the Saints have not been, and you're going to spend a lot of your time throwing the ball near the line of scrimmage, then let's go ahead and be efficient when it's a tight area to throw the ball when we get there. If that's what we're going to be good at, let's be good at that. And the Saints just didn't produce in the red zone. They couldn't run the ball very well. Kendre Miller averaged 4 yards a carry, had 41 yards. Kamara had one 11-yard run. Beyond that, he had 7 carries for 16 yards. They couldn't get Taysom Hill going on the ground. He had a long of 2 on the 6 carries that he took. They did some things with him in the backfield, some direct snaps, as you would expect, and he actually threw a pass that worked out on a short yardage play. They'll get him more integrated into what they're trying to do at this point. Keep in mind, you were dealing with the Saints offensive staff for a while that had a lot of Taysom Hill experience, and then you used him a little bit last year before he got hurt, and now you got a whole new staff for the second year in a row offensively. They're probably trying to learn what they can and can't do with Taysom. That wasn't really effective, but you got to be much better in the red zone. And that brings me to the most concerning thing, to me, by a long shot from Sunday. Blake Grupe is missing every single weekend. Every single weekend. And you just cannot have that. I realize that a lot of these misses are coming from 50-plus. NFL kickers have to make 50-plus yard field goals, period. And you got to situate, like, that position is one where you can have a guy for 10 years and not blink. Like, that happens a little bit in the NFL. You get a kicker that gets in there and he's a stalwart for a long time. That doesn't happen as much at a lot of the different positions because you age out of your prime very quickly. So Grupe, theoretically, is one of the guys on this team that could stick around for a long time. But if he kicks like this, he needs to stick around for no more time, because these are not season-defining kicks. But by the time you get to be a good team, all these kicks define seasons. How many games in the NFL come down to 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, a kick with 8 seconds to go, a kick in overtime? These are wins and losses on the foot of these kickers. And Grupe is missing every single week. Sean Payton would have cut him already. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing or the wrong thing to do. I just know it would have happened. And as I tweeted out yesterday, like, NFL kickers miss like 1 or 2 a month if they're like not that good. The great ones don't miss for a month. Grupe misses every Sunday. Misses a 52-yarder, misses inside a 50-yard. Like, he's missing every day. And all we heard about during training camp, and I'm confident these were not lies, is that Grupe was making everything. And that they like Charlie Smith, and he's a big talent, huge leg, but he's not going to make the team because Grupe's been great. Well, guess what? Grupe is not great. Grupe is probably, at this point, the worst kicker in the NFL. At least if you're going to go by the statistics. Guys don't stick around on teams when you miss 5 kicks in a month. And Grupe's still with the Saints. So either that needs to change now, or the Saints need to look at Charlie Smith. The beauty of what you've got right now in New Orleans, and it's a silver lining to a dark cloud, is that you have the ability to make some mistakes that aren't going to cost you the playoffs, that aren't going to set you back as an organization. And kicker is one of them. Sit Groupie for a week. Bring Charlie Smith up to the active roster. See what he's got. I don't have a lot of patience for kickers missing. I've got patience for a young quarterback figuring some things out. I got patience for a young guy on an island at cornerback figuring some things out. I've got patience for a rookie left tackle trying to deal with that defensive front from the Giants. I'll come up with some patience for Kendre Miller with his injury history. But a kicker needs to kick it through the uprights. And Blake Grupe missing every single week is simply unacceptable. So that's something the Saints have got to consider moving forward. But ultimately, very good win for New Orleans. 26-14. You force the 5 turnovers. You don't turn it over. Hit the big play finally. Blocked. I thought the offensive line did a nice job against a very talented New York defensive front. You did not have Rattler sacked in the game, which is great. It wasn't perfect, and I don't think much the Saints do this year is going to be perfect. But ultimately, you need to get that win. Got it done. I feel great for Kellen Moore. I feel great for Spencer Rattler. And I also feel great for those that were in the Dome yesterday, because I don't feel like you're going to get a lot of wins this year from those season tickets or from that ticket that you pick up on that Sunday morning. But they got one back on Sunday afternoon, and that's a good thing for New Orleans. 26-14 the final. 1-4 the Saints are. They will move forward to play all of a sudden a hot Patriots team. Can we say that? Hot Patriots team coming up Sunday in the Dome. All right, we'll step aside. When we come back, Dr. Jeremy Burnham from Oxford. Talk some injury stuff next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. SwingEasyGCBR.com is that website. It is on Segan at Perkins. Rained pretty hard yesterday into last night. Might not be a great time to go out and try to hit some balls on the driving range or play golf because the ground could be super soaked. Not at Swing Easy Golf Club because it's indoors. And you go inside one of those air-conditioned bays, you can work on your game. You can hit the driving range mode on their simulators. You can get your carry distance, watch the ball travel, whether you cut it, slice it, hook it, draw it, hit those high shots, hit those low penetrating shots. You can see what your carry distance is. You can see your ball speed. You can also see something that I find very, very helpful. It's a slow-mo of your club face at impact. I've noticed I hook the ball when I hit a terrible shot more often than not. And I noticed on that, when I was there a couple weeks ago, that you catch that ball right there on the heel of the club. That's what's generally causing that hard hook. If I stand a little bit further away from the ball, might stay away from that. It's things like that you can pick up from working your game at Swing Easy that you can't just necessarily find at your local driving range. Plus, it's climate control. Go see them. They're on Segan at Perkins at Swing Easy Golf Club. You can find them online at SwingEasyGCBR.com. Swing Easy Golf Club here in Baton Rouge.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here, this Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Lots to do. Wrapping up hour number 1, hour 2 to follow. Lots to do in hour number 2. We'll talk a lot of college football, SEC scores from over the weekend, some LSU grades from Pro Football Focus, as well as Denton Day from College Football Overtime. But right now, time for Sports Health, presented by Ochsner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Bring on Dr. Jeremy Burnham from Ochsner. Dr. Burnham, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure. Certainly want to talk about some throwing as well as some torso injuries, abdominal issues, and that, of course, is what's on everybody's mind here in South Louisiana. That's the Cubs' ace, Cade Horton. I think that's what everybody thought I was going to be talking about here. I believe my ace, come playoff time, broke a rib coughing. Is that possible? And can he come back and pitch soon?
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, it is possible. Look, anybody that's had a rib injury can tell you it's a very painful thing. It sounds like in this case it happened just from repetitive stress over and over, and it may have been a combination of being sick and coughing for a period of time and also throwing. I think he threw like 98 that night.
Yep.
And so if you think about the torque that's going through the torso at that time period, if you've already got a bone that's a little bit weak, it's not unimaginable that could do the rest of the damage. Recovery time, it's variable. This is probably not going to be an issue where it's necessarily going to make that rib fracture worse. But if he's compensating for that rib fracture, then you're starting to think about shoulder and elbow and other things that are downstream from there that could be affected as well, which is why he'll probably give it some time to rest and recover.
That is quite a bummer for my Chicago Cubs. We'll see how that plays out as they play Game 2 in Milwaukee coming up tonight at 8:08. I want to talk to you about more of a high-profile national injury. Tyreek Hill last week was gruesome. I think a lot of people saw it, whether they were watching live or on Twitter. One of those where he gets tackled and you look down and things are pointing the wrong direction. What did you make of that injury to one of the best players in the NFL?
Yeah, I think it's tough to watch. Everybody, I think we all probably saw that on TV at the same time. And, whether you're medical or not, you could watch that injury and know that something pretty serious happened. When a lot of people have isolated ACL tears, they have a little bit different injury mechanism than what we saw with him. When we see the type of injury that we saw in that play, really we're worried about more than just the ACL. And certainly it turned out that he did tear multiple ligaments in that knee. We don't know specifically which ligaments. They've mentioned publicly that the ACL was involved as well as other ligaments. But a lot of times with that mechanism, you're involved in the lateral collateral ligament, sometimes the posterior cruciate ligament. And so all of those injuries have to be addressed as well. The good thing, I think, is that I read that the artery and the nerve were not involved. Oftentimes those are. And those really can then be like a life or limb threatening type situation as opposed to just a knee injury. But regardless, it's a serious injury. We're talking about a long time out from sports where you average see 9 to maybe 16 months on this, even up to 2 years. ACL injuries, 80-90% of people get back and play sports at the same level again. With multi-leg knee injuries where multiple ligaments are involved, that number's a lot lower. Usually 20 to 30% when we're talking about elite athletes. And so it's a completely different animal as compared to just an isolated ACL. Wow,
that's tough to hear from one of the most athletic guys in the National Football League for sure. How's football season been for y'all over at Ochsner and Elite?
Hey, it's going great. We've, really seen a lot of the teams that we're working with have a lot of success. Of course, the weather is getting a little bit cooler now, which is always better for our heat illness concerns. And so I think we're entering that time of the year that maybe it's a little bit safer to play. We're doing a lot of recovery on the weekends. A lot of our teams are coming in and the Elite complex here and doing some recovery and just getting ready for the following week.
Dr. Burnham, we certainly appreciate your time on this Monday. We'll talk in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, son. Have a great one.
That is Dr. Jeremy Burnham with Ochsner at Ochsner Andrews Sports Medicine Institute. We know that sports injuries can be unpredictable. One situation you can protect yourself from is safely returning to play after an injury. It's important to seek care by sports medicine specialists who are experts in rehab. Their care plan can include building back flexibility, balance, endurance, plus psychological support. Get athletes back in the game. So to learn more about sports injury prevention and treatment, visit ochsner.org/BRortho. That was pretty disappointing to hear about Tyreek Hill when you think about like his game and how he's just a speed player. And you're talking about a multi-ligament knee injury that, that's like, if he's talking about 2 years with his age, like, have we kind of seen the last of maybe the most explosive receiver in the NFL?
Yeah, you would think so. It's 2 years is a long time, and then you never know how guys recover from these types of injuries. Sometimes they come back and they're fine, and sometimes they, you can't really tell a difference, but sometimes you can tell when guys have those types of injuries and they just lost a step. So especially at his age, you wonder if this is going to be even harder to come back from.
What's he, like 5'11"? You talk about a 5'11" wide receiver that doesn't have the best speed in the NFL. Like, that all of a sudden becomes a pretty pedestrian player at that point. Terrell Owens wants to run around after losing a step. It's 6'3" and 225 pounds. Like that works a little bit
actually,
better.
So
5'10". That's a tough scene.
31 right now.
Do you have any confidence Cade Horton's going to be pitching anytime soon based on that conversation?
Yeah, thanks to the World Series, maybe.
He broke a rib coughing.
That's the Cubs for you.
I don't approve of that. I need him to pitch.
Yeah, we do.
Instead, I've got Matthew Boyd on short rest literally giving up more runs and hits in the first 2 innings than any pitchers in the history of baseball. You heard this on the telecast on
I didn't
Saturday?
hear it. What happened?
They've been playing playoff baseball for like 150 years.
Yeah, it's a long
The
time.
Brewers on Saturday were the first team in the history of the baseball playoffs to score 9 runs on 10 hits in the first 2 innings of a playoff game. And the leadoff hitter, who we may not see for a couple games or the rest of the series potentially, for the Brewers, Jackson Chourio, was the first hitter in Major League playoff history to have 3 hits in the first 2 innings. So that's exciting.
Can't get any worse, hon. I don't think.
Technically, it could get worse. I don't want it to get worse.
I would
like
will.
the Cubs to play a little bit better in the game. That's the first playoff game I've ever watched on Saturday where I just never even broke a sweat. Like there was just no interest ever. Hour 2 next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. I was able to chat with Jonathan Carbo back on Friday. The Highland Insurance Group, just great people, and they're experts in the field of insurance. I think a lot of people, when they decide to buy their insurance, just go for whatever's the cheapest, give me that. And if that's the way you approach insurance, I'm not going to tell you how to handle your business, but the Howard Insurance Group doesn't approach it like that, so things might line up. If you're worried about making sure that for your premium dollars, your business is taken care of, your business is secure, your business is protected, that's what the Howard Insurance Group prioritizes. They've got dozens of markets. They're an independent broker, and they can make sure you're placed at the proper premium. But what they make sure of first is that your business is protected for those premium dollars you're invested. If you'd like a free audit, go to HighlandIG.com. It's the Highland Insurance Group right here in Baton Rouge. You can find them online at HighlandIG.com.